The KCLR Daily with Brian Redmond. Get involved. Text or WhatsApp 083 306 9696.
Michael O'Doherty is a pioneer in engineer healing, in energy healing, should I say, not engineer healing, energy healing, both in Ireland and abroad. Over 35 years experience of helping individuals. And he's joining us now on the line. Michael, come in, help me out. Will you heal my energy, please?
Yeah, we all need a little bit of that now, Brian, at the moment. In the type of stress we're under, we need definitely to be looking elsewhere to try and resolve our stresses and anxieties in life, don't we, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I understand you're calling for what's described as an urgent national conversation on educational reform, parenting and resilience-building interventions for children. Why?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that, certainly that I see now in my own clinical space, is that parents seem to be lost with the types of stresses and anxieties that children are experiencing. They're looking to avoid school and the children themselves. And unfortunately, I think that what we fail to do is we fail to adapt a proper screening approach as to why it is that these children or indeed our parents are struggling right now with lots of these types of stresses and anxieties that are going on.
Well, as a parent myself and speak to parents regularly, we all know that parents under pressure in so many aspects of their life. But before we talk about how you and people like you could possibly help in this regard, tell us a little bit more about what bioenergy healthcare is.
Yeah, so 35 years ago, we started working with what was called then the bioenergetic system of the body. What science had established was that the primary cause of illness really was a breakdown in the energetic system. So ultimately, if you were to take the human being, break the human being down to cell, molecule, atom, subatomic particle, we'd find an energy frequency. So now we understand that it's frequencies of energy that actually change and can be the cause of illness or cause of different types of stresses and anxieties. And with that, we developed a mechanism and skills to work with the bioenergetic system of the body, which is hands-on and hands-off. And as a result of years then of research, and I work with a lot of medics, we have created this integrated model of care that looks at all aspects of why it is that people present with any degree of problem, whether it's a child that has anxiety, whether it's somebody that has it's not sleeping properly or whatever. So we're really looking at broadening the whole screening mechanism. And I suppose, Brian, when we look at the research that's gone on worldwide, for example, particularly in the States, around why it is that people are presenting with so many different types of problems, health issues, children with health issues now, they've begun to broaden their understanding about how the human functions. And so what we do then when people come to our clinics, we're looking for why it is that the child is refusing to go to school, or the child is burnt out, or is lacking concentration or focus, or for indeed anybody. And so therefore we have to look at the reasons, and those reasons can vary from the womb life of the child to the birth of the child, many different reasons. So what we do then, based on what we find, we work then with a series of energy techniques, looking at emotional transformation skills, looking at primitive reflex skills. So there's so many different aspects to it that we have to bring the attention of the parents to. And when the parents then go away and engage in the process we talked about in our clinic, we're seeing change. We're definitely seeing children and people's quality of life changing.
Okay, so Michael, I think people will totally agree that when it comes to, for example, things, conditions, circumstances that might happen in the womb, circumstances that might happen during birth or early life, stresses, all of these things absolutely play a part in our overall health.
You raised a very serious point there in the context of early childhood adversity and the problems that we're seeing in our clinics. Those early childhood adversities is something that's not been screened for or looked for in a clinical practice. No doctor is educated, in their schools to look at early childhood adversity and how that might play into the problems that we're seeing today in our family environment. So there's huge issues around that. So with regard to how the human being functions with regard to our work, our 35 years of work in this space, and as I said, I work with a lot of medical people, is testimony to the effectiveness of our work. And as I said, Brian, that science has established this is who we are, this is how we function, and people need to to get on board and look at themselves from this perspective.
Yeah, well, I'm fully aware of the fact that frequencies can affect things. You know, as somebody who sits here, for 3 hours a day with a set of headphones on, and I understand totally that vibrations, as in the sounds that travels from my headphones to my ears, make me feel in a particular way. And we see scientific experiments where, one thing vibrates over there, and if it's at the right frequency, something else will vibrate and tune with it over there. That's a scientific fact. But if I was to go into practice and experience what you do with people or to people or for people, what would happen?
So, I've seen, part of my PR, that we sent some clips of me working with a child or working with a young adult that was suffering from depression, for example. So, our work is carried out over 3 consecutive days, an hour each day for the patient. So first of all, we work with the energy. We evaluate exactly why it is the patient or the client might have a particular problem. So we want to look at the story, because behind every illness, there's a story. Behind every issue that parents are exposed to with their children, there's a story. So we're interested in figuring out the story. Why is the patient? So from there, then we work because when a person is stressed or anxious, what we now know scientifically is that the nervous system goes into overload. So most people today, Brian, are in survival mode. They're under pressure, get out there economically, working hard, trying to make ends meet. They're in continuous stress response. So the nervous system goes into overload. What we've discovered is that by working with the energetic system of the body through a series of hand techniques, and people feel this, by the way. People feel different sensations, and anybody can go on my YouTube channel and see the enormous amounts of people who've recovered, or look at the TV documentaries or stuff that we've done. It's been well tested. So when we work with the energy system, there's a real interaction, like you say, taking place. And that interaction, that we're resetting the nervous system. Once we begin to reset the nervous system of the body by working with the energy, then working with breath work and so on, teaching the patient how to visualize, because visualization is critical in the sense that we're able to connect people with, their stresses and release that. And from there, what we're seeing in our clinics is that by resetting the autonomic nervous system, that the digestive system functions better, people are sleeping better, their energy levels come up. But the whole focus of my work is to engage the client in a process that gives them responsibility and control. And it's not about, well, Michael O'Doherty's going to fix your problem. No, I've 35 years of experience in working with the energy system. My job is to say to you, this is your issue. This is the strategy for recovery, and incorporates medicine as well, by the way.
I think you'd be given a miraculous medal if you could just walk in and fix all my problems, Michael, that's for sure anyway. But you're also a key advocate. Also, you're a key advocate of what you describe of the 5 pillars of well-being. Just touch on those for us. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, if we can eat right, breathe right, think right, sleep right, and exercise. If we look at the research alone, in the context of anxiety and depression, for example, we know medical scientific research published in the National Library of Medicine shows that exercise and indeed nutrition and yoga has similar outcomes to medication. So we know that if we can, the biggest problem I find at the moment, Brian, is that people struggle to sleep right. And if you're not sleeping right, that means then that your brain isn't able to clean itself out. Technically, obviously, we call this nearly like a brain pruning. But this we go through different sleep states at nighttime. So we maybe have 4 or 5 different what are called cycles of sleep. Yeah. And in each cycle, we go through different stages. And if those stages aren't gone through, particularly the deep sleep, then what happens is we're starving our brain and our body of oxygen, and therefore we're building up high levels of carbon dioxide. So we're waking up in the morning, headaches, tiredness, all of these types of things. And again, what we find is that when we get people to learn how to sleep healthily, how to eat healthily. People are not eating healthily. That doesn't mean you go on crazy diets or anything like that. But the implications of not sleeping right, of not eating right, the implications of not doing a little bit of exercise has a direct influence in our metabolism. And given that 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut, so therefore when you take proteins, they're converted to serotonin and likewise melatonin. So when we're stressed and we're not sleeping and not eating, the conversion pathways in our body are disrupted, meaning we're not able to convert our foods to serotonin and melatonin, and resulting in these. And again, it's simply about going back and educating the patient in ways that they can adapt that 5-pillar approach, Brian. And if they do that, it's our experience, certainly that their quality of life can improve and change hugely.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, if you take those first three pillars, eat, breathe and sleep, if you take just those three, any organism that we have in our lives, whether it's a flower in the back garden or a pet running around under our feet, they'd be the three things that we would do with any of those organisms. Now, you're not going to take the flowers out and make them exercise or ask them what, well, unless you're Prince Charles, you are, or the King of England as he is now, you're not going to be asking them what the flowers are thinking. But you're certainly going to be making sure that they get fed properly, that they have the opportunity as access to oxygen or whatever it is they need, and sleeping for the animals and things like that. Are we stupid depriving ourselves of this type of stuff?
Well, we are, and I'll tell you what now. If you give me a moment just to explain something very important. In the university, in Columbia University, they have done massive research in there from 2014 onwards, and what they discovered, Brian, was that that 80% of children who struggle with learning or behavioural difficulties, that 80% of these children have what is called a brain pruning issue. Now, so you talked about a plant or a flower, how you might prune it. When a baby is born, the early exposure and stimulation that it gets from its caregiver or its parents is critical to how the brain prunes itself. So what that means is that there are cells that are called microglia. And these microglia, what they do is, as we develop, it basically, these cells go in and they mop up what are called unused synapses. So that means any waste that's in the brain, it's mopped up and the brain wires and develops. Now, what they've discovered is that in children who are exposed to any degree of adversity, that this brain pruning doesn't take place, resulting in concentration, focus issues. But you just think of this for a moment now. We talked about sleep properly there. Think of a child of a year old who has sleep apnea. Think of a child right now whose parent is listening out there, whose child has has tonsil issues. And these tonsils because of their enlargement and continuous infection are causing the child to have an obstruction while it sleeps. Babies go through sleep apnea. This directly affects the brain development of a child. And then if it's not able to eat right, the implications of this is huge. And this is kind of what I'm looking to do, is to bring this awareness to society about how, that we need to understand that there's a real reason why children are having anxiety, having different types of stresses, and that we need to understand it right. And you make a very valid point. If you have a plant and you sow it, you'll prune it, you'll mind it, you'll water it, you'll feed it. We don't do that for ourselves. Yeah. And this is 90% of the reasons, Brian, why we have the types of diseases like cancers and depression and cardiovascular disease that we have in our society, very well medically established.
Well, I mean, they are very well medically established, and of course there's very well established medical treatments out there as well. But going back to our conversations in relation to children's health and services like CAMS, etc., you said in your recent statement that the current approach to children's mental health is fundamentally flawed. I don't think anybody would argue with that. And you also argued that the system is overly reliant on under-resourced services like NEPS and CAMS. Again, I don't think anybody would argue with that. Are you suggesting that the type of work that you do could replace the need for those services, or do you think we need to enhance those services and also add in, this type of consideration?
In the mid-90s, in 1995 and 1997, the CDC and the Kaiser Institute, which is an integrated medical healthcare center in California, Brian, clearly demonstrated that an integrated model of care that looks, and this is what I've been always saying, down through the years, and this is why I work with some eminent medical professors in my field, gastroenterologists, cardiologists, vascular consultants, and so on. So I truly believe that, yes, CAMS is hugely overwhelmed, and NEPS and all that kind of thing. And the idea that we can medicate our children is not a way forward. And if you were to hear and were privy to the stories that I hear in my clinic every day, it's crazy. So yes, I truly believe that we need what the Kaiser Institute has in the States. We need to look at an integrated model that takes all aspects of the human being into consideration, looks at that area adversity, as you were saying earlier, looks at the type of birth, looks at food, looks at all the different aspects of why it is that children and people are experiencing different problems. So we do need a fully integrated model rather than just outsourcing it to something. But we also need to educate parents to understand what it is that they can do for their children at home, within their home environment. That's critical. I mean, it's very easy to look at social media and say social media is the problem. It's not, because resilience, kindness, compassion, and all these positive emotions are developed in the first 3 years of life.
Yeah, but I mean, social media, we also know that, people can change. I've seen adults, Michael, change because they're affected or infected or disaffected by what they see on social media as well. Surely we need to keep education around social media going and not, you wouldn't suggest that once the child gets to 3, they can't be affected by the negative impact of social media.
No, absolutely. But the question then we need to ask, why are children gravitating towards social media? What are they looking for? What are they missing in their lives? Because what we know is that when children are because of the present economic situation, when children are going to crashes very early in life, we know that these children have a tendency to log out and create defensive mechanisms. So we're looking to how it is that we can replace. And I had a young kid in my clinic a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying to her, look at, okay, you're on your phone, you play music, you play sport. Let's try and manage your day. Let's try and manage your energy. Let's embrace it rather than condemning it. Let's look at how you can manage your time and your day. But when parents are out of work and children come home, or you take what's happening? What are they missing in their lives? I remember I had a lovely kid of 14 in my class, or in my clinic, and I said, so why are you stressed? Why are you anxious? If there was one thing, that would be of benefit to you, what would that be? If you were to say one thing to me that would be of benefit to you, what would that be? Well, he said, I'd like to spend more time with my dad. And again, these are the kind of personal stories I'm hearing from children. These children need nourishment. They need to be cared for. They need to be sheltered. They need secure attachment. And this is why children are gravitating, Brian, towards those types of platforms. And so, yes, we do need responsibility around those, absolutely. But we also need to look at the educational system as well, and how that's solely catering for the academic, not the person who's not designed for the academic world. So there's so much involved in this, Brian. It's amazing. Are
you getting much traction from those involved in, for example, our healthcare providers, our healthcare service, etc.? In terms of considering this as an addition, I don't want to use the word alternative because obviously it shouldn't be, but as an addition to the services available.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is where we're at now. I think we're at a crossroads. I think we're at a crossroads where we just medicate our children and lay the foundations for huge problems, or we're at a crossroads where we say, okay, medication has a role to play. I work with psychologists and psychiatrists myself. I refer people for that. I see the value in psychotherapy, counseling, cognitive behavioral therapy. So I'm on board with all of that. But we need to broaden the whole screening mechanism. Ask the question why. Do the analysis, do the research, and then come up with the right integrated model, from energy work to nutrition to exercise to getting people sleeping properly, family time together, getting out. Simplicity is the key, Brian. We don't need to make this complicated. Yeah. But our modern economic society forces both couples out to work. And I truly believe that when a child is born until the age of at least 18 months, that the caregiver, the mother, the father, the parents, whoever the parent model is, that the government should fund that for at least 18 months and then slowly ease back to work so that the child can benefit from that type of nurturing and caring.
Well, there's a lot of people agreeing with the sentiment, at least, of what you're saying, Michael. Brian, yes, we are turning our children into robots. Sorry to say, says one particular texter. It's certainly worth consideration, and I think most people would agree with those 5 pillars of well-being. Eat well, breathe, sleep, exercise, and think. Develop positive thoughts. Bioenergy healthcare expert Michael O'Doherty, thank you very much for joining us here on the KCLR Daily this morning. Lots